In the shadow of 7 hills, a city was born from myth. What began as a humble settlement along the Tiber River would rise to command the known world. This is the story of Rome, a civilization that shaped law, architecture, warfare, and identity for millennia. For over 1,000 years, Rome evolved, from a monarchy to a republic, and then to an empire. Its legions marched across continents, carving roads and rewriting the fate of nations. But glory has a price, and every rise carries the seeds of its own fall. Rome's triumphs were vast, yet so were its inner conflicts, betrayals, and civil wars. From Julius Caesar's ambition to Augustus's peace, from Nero's excess to Constantine's transformation, Rome endured emperors, invaders, plagues, revolts, and still it thrived. Till it didn't. As Western Rome crumbled under its own weight, Eastern Rome quietly carried the torch. This isn't just a tale of battles and emperors. It's the legacy of roads we still walk, laws we still follow, and languages we still speak. It's a chronicle of human ambition, resilience, and downfall. Welcome to the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. In 753 BCE, legend says Rome was born from the bloodline of gods and kings. Twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, suckled by a she-wolf, symbolized the strength and destiny of the new city. One brother would live to name it, the other slain in rivalry. The tale begins in Alba Longa, a royal city where the twins' grandfather was dethroned. The gods intervened through Mars, fathering the boys. Their mother, Rhea Silvia, a Vestal virgin, had defied fate and empire in a single act. Abandoned on the Tiber's shores, the twins were rescued not by chance, but by the will of fate. A she-wolf nursed them, a shepherd raised them, and Rome found its mythic roots in the wild. Romulus would ultimately kill Remus after a dispute over the city's founding rights. The act set the tone for Rome's violent, uncompromising future. Bloodshed and ambition built its foundation. Romulus became the first king of Rome. Under his rule, the city welcomed outcasts, exiles, and criminals. What others discarded, Rome embraced, forging a people hardened by necessity. To grow his new city, Romulus orchestrated the infamous rape of the Sabine women. Roman men abducted the daughters of neighboring tribes, sealing a legacy of both violence and diplomacy. Sabine retaliation was inevitable. But when the women intervened, begging for peace between their fathers and husbands, a fragile unity formed. Rome had expanded, through force, then family. Following Romulus, a series of kings would take the throne, each shaping Rome's institutions, beliefs, and identity. It was a kingdom, but no ordinary one. Its eyes were set on eternity. Numa Pompilius, Rome's second king, was a Sabine known for wisdom and piety. He established Rome's religious customs, priesthoods, and festivals. From chaos, he brought sacred order. Numa introduced the Vestal virgins, Flamines, and Pontifex Maximus. His reign emphasized peace over conquest, proving Rome could be led not only by sword, but by spirit. Tullus Hostilius followed with a more aggressive agenda. He embodied Rome's warlike nature and led conquests against neighboring cities like Alba Longa, where Rome's founders once fled. When Alba Longa was defeated, Tullus forced its citizens into Rome, increasing its population. He destroyed the city, but preserved its people, blending cultures into a growing Roman identity. The battle between the Hieraci and Curiati, triplet champions from Rome and Alba, was a legendary duel staged to avoid full war. It ended in blood and glory, a hallmark of Roman myth-making. Tullus's reign ended in divine fury. Disregarding religious rites, he was struck down by lightning. Rome learned that defying the gods came at a cost, even for kings. Ancus Marcius, Numa's grandson, restored the sacred rites, but also built Rome's port at Ostia. He balanced war and peace, building infrastructure and securing trade, Rome's first step to global power. Ancus extended Roman control along the Tiber and established colonies. His efforts transformed Rome from a tribal settlement into a city with a growing reach and influence. The fifth king, Lucius Tarquinius Priscus, was Etruscan by origin, a bold reminder that Rome would often borrow and adapt foreign culture. He brought wealth, symbolism, and grandeur. Priscus doubled the Senate's size, built the Circus Maximus for chariot races, and began the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's great sewer system. He turned clay and stone into civilization. The Etruscan influence deepened. From architecture to rituals, Priscus brought elegance and order. Rome's future grandeur had roots in his vision. Assassinated by jealous nobles, Priscus didn't live to see his full plans unfold. But his wife Tanaquil ensured power passed to their protege, Servius Tullius. Servius Tullius rose from humble origins, perhaps even a slave. Yet he ruled with vision, organizing the Roman people by wealth and military service. The census was born. His reforms laid the groundwork for the Roman Republic. Wealth determined military obligation, shaping the Roman army and the future Senate structure. Servius expanded the city, built new walls, and brought in more citizens. But his most lasting mark was civic, defining rights, duties, and the early framework of class. His end was violent. Tarquinius Superbus, the ambitious son of Priscus, murdered him and seized the throne. Rome was thrown back into tyranny. Tarquinius Superbus ruled as a despot. He ignored the Senate, used fear to command loyalty, and completed the Temple of Jupiter, Optimus Maximus, Rome's most sacred shrine. His tyrannical rule soured the people. His son, Sextus Tarquinius, committed a brutal act, raping the noblewoman Lucretia. Her suicide sparked outrage. Outrage turned into revolt. Roman nobles, led by Lucius Junius Brutus, rallied the people. They overthrew the king, expelled his line, and vowed never to be ruled by monarchs again. In 509 BCE, the Roman kingdom ended. The Republic was born in its place, a system built on laws, elected officials, and deep mistrust of concentrated power. The early kings had shaped Rome's institutions, religion, and culture. They laid the stones, literal and symbolic, of what would become an empire. Though the monarchy fell, its legacy endured. Rome's destiny was only beginning. What was once a myth would now become history. The Republic had arrived, and Rome would rise. The birth of the Roman Republic in 509 BC marked a seismic shift in the ancient world. Gone were the kings, replaced by elected consuls, senates, and assemblies. Rome would now be governed by law, and by men whose ambition knew no bounds. At the heart of the Republic was the Senate, a body of elders originally drawn from noble families. Though unelected, the Senate held immense power, guiding military campaigns, foreign affairs, and state finances. Each year, 2 consuls were elected by citizens to serve as Rome's executive leaders. Their authority was absolute, but only for a year. This system was designed to prevent tyranny, a direct response to the ousted kings. The early years of the Republic were shaped by internal class conflict. Patricians, the aristocratic elite, dominated political life, while the plebeians, Rome's common citizens, had little voice in government. Tensions between the classes led to the struggle of the orders, a centuries-long effort by the plebeians to secure political rights. Over time, they won the right to elect their own officials, the tribunes of the plebs. The tribunes held sacred power. They could veto laws, protect citizens from abuses, and represent the interests of the people. Their emergence marked the beginning of checks and balances in Roman governance. One of the Republic's earliest legal milestones was the Law of the 12 Tables, codified around 450 BCE. Displayed publicly, it ensured that all citizens knew their rights and obligations. Rome began as a modest city-state, but it had an insatiable appetite for expansion. Through war, alliances, and colonization, the Republic began to spread its influence across the Italian peninsula. The Samnite Wars, 343–290 BC, were among the Republic's most brutal early conflicts. Rome fought fiercely to control central Italy, often facing devastating losses before eventual victory. With Italy largely under Roman control, Rome turned its attention outward. The First Punic War, 264–241 BCE, against Carthage, marked its entrance into Mediterranean power politics. The Punic Wars would define Rome for generations. The Second Punic War, 221 BCE, led by the brilliant Carthaginian general Hannibal, nearly brought Rome to its knees. Hannibal's daring crossing of the Alps, with war elephants in tow, remains one of history's most audacious military feats. He devastated Roman armies at battles like Cannae, yet could never conquer the city itself. Rome eventually recovered, thanks in large part to Scipio Africanus, who defeated Hannibal at the Battle of Zama in 202 BCE. Rome emerged from the war as the dominant force in the western Mediterranean. With Carthage defeated, Rome turned eastward. In a series of campaigns known as the Macedonian Wars, Rome dismantled the Hellenistic kingdoms that once followed Alexander the Great. By the mid-2nd century BCE, Rome controlled Greece, Asia Minor, North Africa, and Spain. The Republic was no longer just a city-state, it had become a Mediterranean empire. But conquest brought new challenges. Rome now ruled over millions of non-Romans, collected vast wealth, and struggled to govern provinces far from the capital. Wealth flowed into Rome, enriching the elite and widening the gap between rich and poor. Powerful generals returned from campaigns with slaves, gold, and ambitions to match. The Republic's reliance on slave labor reshaped its economy. Small farmers, the backbone of the Roman military, found themselves displaced by wealthy landowners who built massive estates called latifundia. Social unrest grew. Reformers like the Gracchi brothers, Tiberius and Gaius, sought to redistribute land and empower the poor. Both were assassinated, victims of senatorial violence and fear of change. Meanwhile, military power became concentrated in the hands of a few. Generals like Gaius Marius and Lucius Cornelius Sulla reformed the army, turning soldiers' loyalty from the Republic to their commanders. Sulla marched on Rome in 88 BCE, becoming dictator and executing thousands of political enemies. His actions shattered Republican norms and paved the way for future strongmen. In the chaos that followed, new power players emerged. Gnaeus Pompey, Marcus Crassus, and a rising politician named Gaius Julius Caesar formed the First Triumvirate, a secret alliance that defied the Senate's authority. Caesar's conquests in Gaul made him immensely popular and powerful. But when the Senate ordered him to disband his army, he crossed the Rubicon River in 49 BCE, a declaration of civil war. The conflict between Caesar and Pompey tore the Republic apart. Caesar emerged victorious and was declared dictator for life, a title that horrified traditionalists. On the Ides of March, 44 BCE, Caesar was assassinated by senators who believed they were saving the Republic. But instead of restoration, his death led to even greater instability. Caesar's heir, Octavian, and his former ally, Mark Antony, clashed in a struggle for supremacy. Their rivalry culminated in the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, where Octavian defeated Antony and Cleopatra of Egypt. Octavian became Rome's sole ruler. In 27 BCE, he was granted the title Augustus. The Republic had effectively ended. In its place stood the Roman Empire. Though the Republic died, its legacy lived on. Its institutions, laws, and ideals influenced political thought for centuries, laying foundations for modern democracy and governance. The Roman Republic lasted nearly 500 years. It endured war, class struggle, and internal corruption. But ultimately, it could not withstand the ambitions of men who believed they were greater than the state. With the Senate granting Octavian the title Augustus in 27 BCE, the Roman Empire was born. Though the facade of the Republic remained, real power now rested with the emperor. Augustus was a master of image and restraint. He never called himself a king but carefully consolidated power, holding titles like Princeps, First Citizen, and Pontifex Maximus. Under Augustus, the empire entered a golden age of peace and prosperity, known as the Pax Romana, a 200-year-long period marked by stability, infrastructure, and flourishing trade. Augustus reformed the tax system, expanded the road network, and established a standing army and the Praetorian Guard to protect the emperor. His rule set a powerful precedent. The empire was divided into provinces, each governed by officials loyal to Rome. Local elites were often allowed to rule under Roman oversight, creating a delicate balance of control and autonomy. Public works were everywhere. Aqueducts carried fresh water into cities. Roads stretched across continents. The Colosseum, temples, and forums became icons of imperial grandeur. Augustus's successors varied in ability and temperament. Tiberius ruled cautiously. Caligula descended into madness. Claudius expanded the empire into Britain. Nero, infamous for his tyranny, became a symbol of excess. Despite internal challenges, Rome's borders continued to expand. Under Trajan, the empire reached its greatest territorial extent, spanning from Britain to the Persian Gulf. The Roman economy thrived on conquest, slave labor, and trade. Goods flowed from Africa, India, and the East. Roman coins were widely used, and cities grew wealthy from commerce and tribute. Roman culture fused with local traditions. In the East, Greek language and ideas flourished under Roman administration. In the West, Latin became the lingua franca and cornerstone of law and governance. Rome also experienced waves of philosophical and religious transformation. Stoicism appealed to Roman elites, while mystery religions from the East gained popular traction. A monumental shift came in the 1st century CE with the rise of Christianity. Initially persecuted, Christians worshipped in secret and faced martyrdom under emperors like Nero and Diocletian. In 313 CE, Emperor Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, legalizing Christianity. Later, he would become the first Christian emperor and move the capital east to Byzantium, renamed Constantinople. Constantine's reforms were sweeping. He reorganized the empire, centralized the military, and laid the groundwork for a Christian imperial state. His rule marked the empire's transformation from pagan to Christian. The empire faced increasing pressures on its frontiers. Germanic tribes, Huns, and Persians tested Roman defenses. To manage the strain, Emperor Diocletian earlier divided the empire into eastern and western halves. While the East thrived, the Western Roman Empire became increasingly unstable. Political assassinations, short-lived emperors, and corruption weakened the heart of Roman governance. The economy faltered. Debasement of currency, heavy taxation, and declining agricultural productivity eroded confidence in the state and led to social discontent. Rome's army, once the most formidable in the world, now relied heavily on mercenaries and foreign auxiliaries. Discipline declined, and loyalty to the emperor waned. The sack of Rome by the Visigoths in 410 CE sent shockwaves through the empire. For the first time in 800 years, the Eternal City had fallen to invaders. A new wave of invasions followed. Vandals, Ostrogoths, and Huns swept through Roman territories, pillaging cities and destabilizing provincial governments. In 451 CE, Roman forces under General Flavius Aetius halted Attila the Hun at the Battle of the Catalonian Plains. It was one of Rome's last great victories, but a temporary reprieve. By the mid-5th century, the Western Empire was on life support. The Eastern Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, increasingly acted independently. In 476 CE, the Germanic chieftain Odoacer deposed Romulus Augustulus, the last emperor of the West. With little resistance, the Western Roman Empire officially came to an end. Though its fall was gradual and complex, symbolically, 476 marked the close of ancient Rome's imperial chapter in the West, a civilization undone not by a single sword, but by decades of decline. The Eastern Roman Empire endured for nearly another 1,000 years, preserving Roman law, Christian theology, and Greek culture under a new name, Byzantium. The legacy of the Roman Empire is immense. Its legal systems, engineering, language, and institutions continue to influence the modern world. Latin, once the language of conquest, became the foundation of Romance languages. Roman law inspired modern civil codes from Europe to Latin America. The idea of a centralized state, with professional administration and universal citizenship, shaped the political imagination of Europe and beyond for centuries. Even as the Western Empire collapsed, its memory was kept alive through legends, art, and scholarship. The concept of Rome outlived the city itself. Roman roads still lie beneath modern highways. Roman aqueducts still stand. And Roman ideals of governance, law, and citizenship echo in the halls of today's parliaments and courts. The Roman Empire, born of ambition and ingenuity, endured for centuries and shaped the course of human civilization. Its rise was monumental, but its fall inevitable. Daily life in the Roman Empire was shaped by a structured social hierarchy, urbanization, and the rhythm of the seasons. Whether in Rome or the provinces, Romans organized their world with remarkable order. At the top of Roman society stood the Patricians, aristocratic families with noble lineage. Below them were the Plebeians, the common citizens who formed the backbone of Rome's economy and military. Slavery was a fundamental part of Roman life. Enslaved individuals worked in households, on farms, in mines, and even as educators or civil servants. Though their status was low, some gained freedom and became citizens. A Roman citizen's status determined everything: rights, duties, and lifestyle. Men had legal authority over families, while women managed the home, often with surprising autonomy in financial matters. In urban centers like Rome, Antioch, or Carthage, life was bustling. Crowded insulae, apartment buildings, housed the poor, while the wealthy lived in spacious domus with inner courtyards and private baths. Public spaces were central to community life. Forums acted as marketplaces and political centers. Citizens gathered to debate, trade, and witness public speeches and ceremonies. Bathhouses were a hallmark of Roman cities. They served not only for hygiene, but also for social interaction, political gossip, and business dealings. The thermae were centers of public life. Roman food varied greatly by class. The poor lived on bread, porridge, and vegetables. The wealthy dined on exotic dishes like stuffed dormice, oysters, and imported spices from Asia and Africa. Entertainment played a crucial role in Roman culture. Gladiatorial games, theatrical plays, and chariot races at the Circus Maximus were immensely popular with the public. The Colosseum in Rome could seat over 50,000 spectators and hosted brutal spectacles: animal hunts, public executions, and gladiator contests. These events were free, sponsored by politicians seeking favor. Religion was deeply embedded in Roman daily life. Temples dotted every city, and rituals honored a pantheon of gods: Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and dozens more, including household spirits called Lares and Penates. Festivals were frequent and colorful. The Saturnalia brought days of gift-giving and social role reversal. The Lupercalia honored fertility with wild celebrations. Education was prized among the elites. Boys were taught rhetoric, philosophy, and law, skills vital for public service. Girls learned music, reading, and household management, especially in aristocratic families. Greek influence was strong in education and culture. Wealthy Romans often hired Greek tutors and emulated Greek art, literature, and philosophy, blending it with Roman values. Roman art was practical and propagandistic. Busts of ancestors and emperors lined homes and public buildings, reinforcing identity, family honor, and imperial authority. Mosaics and frescoes decorated walls and floors, depicting mythological scenes, daily life, and landscapes. These artworks provide historians with insights into Roman aesthetics and values. Clothing reflected status. Citizens wore the toga, a symbol of Roman identity, while women wore stole and elaborate hairstyles. Dyes and fabrics indicated wealth. Latin was the language of administration and law in the West, while Greek dominated the East. Multilingualism was common in border provinces where Rome absorbed diverse peoples. Rome's legal system was among its greatest legacies. The 12 Tables evolved into a sophisticated framework governing contracts, property, and citizenship, principles still echoed in modern law. Marriage and family were central institutions. A Roman father, pater familias, had legal authority over his household, but emotional bonds and social obligations shaped family life profoundly. Funerals were important public events. Wealthy families paraded masks of ancestors. Tombs often bore inscriptions celebrating virtues, achievements, and social rank. Military life was both feared and revered. Soldiers, often stationed far from home, lived in disciplined environments. Service brought prestige and, often, land or citizenship as a reward. Trade routes connected every corner of the empire. Goods flowed through a network of roads and sea lanes, bringing silk from China, spices from India, and grain from Egypt. Provinces were more than sources of revenue. They were vibrant contributors to Roman identity. Local customs blended with Roman laws and architecture, creating a shared but diverse imperial culture. Roman medicine was based on Greek theories of humors. Though primitive by modern standards, physicians like Galen conducted early surgeries and advanced anatomical knowledge. Sanitation was advanced. Aqueducts brought fresh water to cities, while sewers like Rome's Cloaca Maxima removed waste. Public latrines were common, and bathing was a cultural norm. Fire and disease were constant threats in crowded cities. Fire brigades and rudimentary health practices helped manage these dangers, but epidemics like the Antonine Plague had devastating effects. Despite inequalities, upward mobility was possible. Freed slaves could become merchants, citizens, or even senators. Ambition and patronage often mattered more than birth. Citizenship was a prized possession. In 212 CE, Emperor Caracalla extended citizenship to all free men in the empire, a move that transformed Roman identity and tax policy. Rome's civic pride was immense. The phrase civis Romanus sum, I am a Roman citizen, carried political weight, legal protection, and a sense of superiority throughout the ancient world. Life in the Roman Empire was a paradox of discipline and indulgence, hierarchy and opportunity, brutal power and enduring legacy. It was a world meticulously ordered, yet constantly evolving. The 3rd century marked a turning point in Roman history, a time when the very foundations of the empire began to fracture under internal and external pressures. Following the Severan dynasty, Rome entered a prolonged period of instability. Between 235 and 284 CE, over 20 emperors came and went, many ruling for mere months. This became known as the crisis of the 3rd century. Emperors were no longer chosen through senatorial consensus or orderly succession. Instead, military coups elevated generals to the purple, often resulting in civil wars and regional fragmentation. The empire's vast borders grew increasingly difficult to defend. Germanic tribes along the Rhine and Danube and Sassanid Persians in the east tested Roman resolve with relentless invasions. Rome's economy teetered under the weight of continuous warfare. Inflation spiraled as emperors debased the currency to fund armies, eroding the value of Roman coinage and confidence alike. Urban centers declined as trade routes were disrupted. Provinces once wealthy and bustling saw their cities wane, and local economies reverted to barter and subsistence. To stabilize the empire, Emperor Diocletian came to power in 284 CE and initiated sweeping reforms. He restructured the military, introduced new taxes, and attempted to fix prices. Diocletian divided the empire into eastern and western halves in what became known as the Tetrarchy. Two senior emperors, Augusti, and two juniors, Caesars, ruled jointly to improve governance. Though effective in theory, the Tetrarchy faltered due to rivalry among co-emperors. Unity under one ruler remained elusive, and succession often led to renewed conflict. Constantine the Great emerged as a unifying figure. After defeating his rivals, he became sole emperor in 324 CE and moved the capital to Byzantium, renaming it Constantinople. Constantine's reign marked a significant transformation. Most notably, he legalized Christianity with the Edict of Milan in 313 CE, ending centuries of persecution. Christianity, once a persecuted sect, grew rapidly. Church leaders gained political influence, and the emperor increasingly involved himself in theological disputes, blurring church and state. The rise of Christianity shifted Roman cultural values. Pagan temples were converted or abandoned, and traditional rituals faded, altering the empire's spiritual identity. Despite reforms, systemic challenges remained. The military was stretched thin, corruption plagued administration, and tax burdens increased, alienating the peasantry. In 376 CE, a pivotal event occurred. The Visigoths, fleeing the advancing Huns, were granted entry into Roman territory. Mistreatment by Roman officials led to rebellion. In 378 CE, Emperor Valens faced the Visigoths at the Battle of Adrianople, a disastrous Roman defeat. Valens was killed, and the myth of Roman military invincibility shattered. The empire never fully recovered from Adrianople. Federati, barbarian allies, were now settled within imperial borders, serving in the army, but often remaining autonomous. In the early 5th century, barbarian tribes grew increasingly bold. Alaric, king of the Visigoths, famously sacked Rome in 410 CE, a psychological blow that echoed across the ancient world. Though Rome recovered physically, the symbolic impact was immense. The Eternal City had not been sacked in over 800 years. The Western Empire was showing clear signs of decline. The Roman state responded by further empowering barbarian generals and tribes in exchange for military support. This practice eroded centralized control and Roman identity. In 455 CE, the Vandals launched another sack of Rome, more destructive than the Visigoths. Naval raids, plundering, and hostage-taking marked a period of worsening insecurity. The Western Roman Empire was plagued by weak emperors and powerful generals. Figures like Ricimer, a Germanic general, became kingmakers behind the throne. Economic decline accelerated. Agricultural production dwindled, trade networks disintegrated, and cities depopulated. Italy, once the empire's heart, was now impoverished and vulnerable. The Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantine, fared better due to stronger leadership, wealth from trade, and a more defensible capital. Constantinople became a beacon of endurance. In contrast, the West relied heavily on alliances with barbarian kings. Rome's legions now included more non-Roman soldiers than ever, often loyal to their commanders, not the state. In 476 CE, Romulus Augustulus, the last Western Roman emperor, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. The event marked the conventional end of the Western Empire. While the Eastern Empire would continue for nearly another 1,000 years, the fall of the West represented a rupture in continuity, ushering in what historians call the Middle Ages. Even in decline, Roman influence persisted. Latin remained the language of learning, Roman law shaped emerging kingdoms, and the Christian Church preserved elements of Roman order. The fall was not a single moment, but a long erosion. Rome's collapse was the result of compounded crises, military, economic, political, and cultural, that the empire could no longer withstand. To the people living through it, Rome's decline was not necessarily seen as an end. Many thought of themselves as Romans long after imperial structures disappeared. After the Western Roman Empire's fall in 476 CE, Rome's physical dominance faded, but its influence only deepened. The Roman legacy would shape laws, languages, and institutions across centuries. Latin, the language of Rome, did not vanish with the empire. It evolved into the Romance languages, Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian, and influenced English profoundly. Roman law served as the bedrock for modern legal systems. The Corpus Juris Civilis, compiled under Emperor Justinian in the East, became foundational for European jurisprudence. The idea of written laws that apply equally to all citizens was a Roman contribution. This concept continues to guide democratic societies and legal institutions around the world. The Roman Republic's ideas of citizenship, checks and balances, and senatorial governance inspired the founding principles of modern democracies, including that of the United States. Architecture stands as one of Rome's most visible legacies. Techniques such as the arch, vault, dome, and concrete construction revolutionized engineering and still inform design today. Cities across Europe and the Mediterranean bear Roman foundations. Grid street plans, public forums, aqueducts, amphitheaters, and bathhouses reflect Rome's urban blueprint. The Roman Catholic Church preserved much of Roman order. As the empire fell, the Church rose in authority, maintaining Latin, classical texts, and imperial organizational models. Christianity, once persecuted by Roman authorities, became a state religion under Constantine, and later spread through the remnants of the empire via Roman infrastructure. The medieval papacy adopted Roman titles, garb, and customs. The Pope became a spiritual successor not only to Peter, but also to the emperors of Rome in matters of authority. The Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire, survived until 1453 CE, preserving Roman traditions, administration, and classical knowledge through times of great upheaval. Byzantium blended Roman law with Greek culture and Christian theology, acting as a bridge between ancient and medieval worlds and a guardian of classical heritage. Art and literature from the Renaissance period were deeply influenced by rediscovered Roman texts, sculptures, and ideals. The Renaissance was, in many ways, a Roman revival. Philosophers and statesmen studied Cicero, Virgil, Seneca, and Livy. Their works shaped Enlightenment thought and informed emerging ideals of reason, liberty, and civic duty. Roman military discipline and structure became a model for later armies. Ranks, formations, and logistical practices found echoes in medieval and modern military traditions. The Roman road network, stretching over 250,000 miles, connected provinces and fostered communication, trade, and conquest. Many European roads today still follow Roman routes. The Julian calendar, introduced under Julius Caesar, provided a solar-based system more accurate than any prior. It laid the groundwork for the Gregorian calendar used today. The concept of imperial majesty and universal rule inspired later empires. The Holy Roman Empire, Tsardom of Russia, and British Empire all drew on Roman imagery and ideals. Titles such as Tsar and Kaiser stem from Caesar, underscoring how Rome's authority echoed in rulers long after its fall. The Roman model of power remained aspirational. Medieval monarchs styled themselves as Roman successors, linking their legitimacy to a legacy that symbolized unity, law, and civilization. Rome's vision of order shaped city planning, political structures, and public life. The forum, senate, and public baths were more than buildings. They were ideals. Roman education emphasized rhetoric, logic, and moral philosophy. These remained central to Western curricula well into the 19th century, shaping leaders and thinkers. Civic identity, a sense of duty to the state and public welfare, was a Roman invention. This idea carried into modern notions of citizenship and civil responsibility. Roman art, realistic, narrative, and public, set a precedent for Western visual storytelling. Relief sculptures and mosaics informed Christian iconography and Renaissance aesthetics. Entertainment as mass spectacle began with Roman amphitheaters and gladiatorial games. The concept of state-sponsored public amusement continues today in different forms. Rome's aqueducts exemplified sophisticated infrastructure. Supplying millions with fresh water, they demonstrated how engineering could improve lives, a principle echoed in modern utilities. Public health, city sanitation, and sewage systems, largely unheard of in earlier civilizations, became Roman standards and were revived by later urban planners. The image of Rome loomed large in political thought. Machiavelli, Montesquieu, and Jefferson looked to Roman history to understand power, corruption, and governance. Even Rome's decline served as a lesson. Historians and leaders drew on its fall to warn against decadence, division, overreach, and neglect of civic virtue. Through its triumphs and failures, Rome became a mirror for future civilizations, a symbol of what humanity can build and how easily it can be lost without vigilance. In every stone arch, legal principle, or written word from the classical world, Rome lives on. It is not merely a past civilization, it is a foundation upon which much of our present rests.